Welcome to another episode of the Golden Moment podcast. My name is Mijo Biscan. In today's conversation, I spoke with Jack the Bear Mantz. He's a mastering engineer, and I've been involved in his mastering studio with Adam Dempsey from a previous episode, if you caught that episode with Adam. The first time I heard about Jack the Bear was in the liner notes of one of my favourite albums from a Melbourne band called Augie March. The album's called Sunset Studies. If you don't know that album, you should check it out. And that kind of got him on my radar, and then I just kept kind of following him over the years. And apart from being a mastering engineer, and a really good one who's been doing it a long time, has his own studio now, he also does something called Mastering Music, Mastering Life, which is a kind of mentorship program for mostly musicians and mastering engineers. And I really wanted to chat to him because he's been at it for a long time, but this area of mastery is something I'm very passionate about from my background in doing Taekwondo. So we talked a little bit about martial arts and this idea of mastery and what it really is, the idea of self-transcendence, self-mastery. And from the creative workshops that I run called Creativity Mindset Mastery. So it's obviously something that we both have in common. And so I really have been wanting to chat to him for a while about this idea, knowing that we'd have a lot of overlap. And it was a really great conversation. It was another conversation that went in lots of directions, mostly covering Tony's journey through mastering, where it started, all the way to him having his own studio, mentoring others, and just the journey that he's been through. So it was a really great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. So here is Tony Jack the Bear Mantz. I'm here with Tony Jack the Bear Mantz, mastering engineer. Many other things, has many other strings to his bow. So welcome, man. Looking forward to this conversation with you.
G'day, Mia. Been a long time coming and a few false starts, but here we are.
That's right. Yeah. We've been talking about this for a while, and you also have your own podcast, which I've been watching over the last couple of years, which has been definitely an inspiration for me getting this off the ground. So thanks wonderful.
For that. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's labour of love for me, and I'm hoping to put more energy and time into it as the months roll on. But as you can appreciate, it's a lot of work. Takes up resources, a lot of organising.
Yeah.
A lot of ducks have got to line up for things to happen the way you want, but I think it's a very rewarding thing, and it's fantastic. We're in a time now where people have access to the technology and platforms to be able to have a voice and do their own thing. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, I will have introduced you a bit and talked about your mastering background, but maybe it's worth talking a little bit about your journey through where that started and where you are now with your own studio and all of that stuff. What did that kind of look like?
Music was something I always loved, me as a child, and I was not good as a musician. That, in fact, I'm worse today. Interesting. I've got a guitar collection. People think I'm a guitarist, and the first thing I just want to get it very clear. I said, look, I'm just one of those collector wanker guys, okay? I'm not a player. I'm a collector. I'm just one of those wankers, right? So
you do have some beautiful guitars in your studio.
I do, and it's a shame. I hardly do pick them up, although I do invite all my clients to come in and have fun with them and whatnot. But I jokingly refer to them as my superannuation, given that they're all 70s, all original guitars, and hopefully the only thing that appreciates in my studio. But look, I'm digressing. I always had an interest in music as a youngster, and always wanted to do something in music. Much to my father's chagrin, he was an academic, wanted me to follow, what he felt he had groomed me to, do a law degree and all that kind of stuff, and I had no interest in it whatsoever. And you know, I left. You know, I left home and I traveled a lot, and I bummed around lots of different studios, and I observed, and never really had a job in a studio as such. But I got introduced to mastering very early on. That's why I tell people mastering found me. I had no idea what the hell it was. You know, I was a teenager. And when I just saw the process of how quick it was, and how you had lots of turnover in the work, but more importantly, what I discovered very early as a youngster was that because it wasn't part of the industry that enjoyed a lot of profile or prestige, no one really knew about it. There were less people that were vying for positions to learn about mastering or get into mastering. Everyone was lining up to become mix engineers and tracking engineers and wanted to become producers and the like. And so for me, I never got into this because I wanted to be a rock star, if you will. I just wanted a job that I loved doing. It was as simple as that. It was always about lifestyle, just working out from a young age that, I don't know if your viewers or listeners remember, but Mars Confectionery had a commercial where their slogan was, 8 hours work, 8 hours rest, and 8 hours play, or something like that. And I thought, so based on that formula, my logic told me, well, approximately 50% of your waking hours are going to be spent working. Well, shit, if that's the case, I better find something that I really like doing, because I'd seen a lot of people with their drudgery of life working. And my dad, as a youngster, my dad instilled a really great work ethic in me, got me working on school holidays. And one of the places he had it on stage was this canteen in Port Melbourne near the docks. And so there was this is back when Australia had a manufacturing base. So loads of factories. There was the docks with the ships coming in and whatnot. And seeing people come in with just drudgery, and Monday mornings, that was the worst time you'd ever see them. They were in the worst mood. And everyone's working for Friday knockoff time. And so I said, this is not for me. I'm not going to do this. And when I was 15, I made a pact with myself that I will not work for the man. I will not wear a collar and tie, and I will not do the 9 to 5 thing. I've had to do those things along the way, but I just made a pact with myself that I would not allow myself to end up having those things or a combination of as the rest of my working life. And so I did all I could to learn, and I didn't go through the traditional model that most of my peers and contemporaries did, which is you went to a studio, you got a job, you cleaned toilets, you cleaned floors, you stayed there for, you were treated like a slave for X amount of time, you earned your stripes, you then became an assistant, and then if you're lucky, you may become an in-house engineer. I bypassed all of that, and I had to do that in stages at different places, but not in a formal manner. And so I was fortunate that I got to become a bit of a studio whore, and just went to lots of different places and watched lots of different engineers and different studios and different approaches, and to the point where I was able, I felt confident enough to start my own thing in 1991 here in Melbourne. Which began as what was called Sound Tools back then, just a 2-track digital audio workstation, which was very revolutionary at the time, mind you. And so I got into that, and then started that from a coffee table in a flat, and built a business slowly from a coffee table into a bedroom of that flat, into a fibro shack at another house that my ex-wife and I purchased in the mid-90s. That was 2000. Then I went to Sing Sing, and I spent 6 years there, and that's where I really became, for lack of a better term, legitimate in the industry and that's where things really started to accelerate for me, and to the point where I was able to create enough income stream for me to master exclusively, because right up until that time, up until 2003, I was doing a lot of other sideline jobs. So it was a 21-year journey from going from day one with not one client till the day where I realised, shit, I don't have to do anything supplementary anymore, and I've built enough critical mass. And the reason it took 21 years for me was because I always had ambitions that when I was to build my studio, I wanted to do it at the highest possible level that I could afford, not make too many compromises on it, without going silly, just take it to a point where I felt I was getting that best bang for the buck in return, but it was high level, which meant it cost a lot of money. And so it took a little longer. And that was a choice that I made because I never wanted to die, with a regret that I never tried. I'd rather give it a go and fail than just kind of not even attempt to go for the summit. And so, from Sing Sing, went to my current situation, which is Deluxe Mastering in Brunswick, and we opened the doors there in April of 2006, and we haven't looked back since. Here we are.
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful. Yeah, I like that there's such a long arc to that story. Well, I don't necessarily like it, but just that... and
it's ongoing. It's an ongoing arc, Mio. I don't think that arc ever ends. We make... I think common mistake people make is that we're always thinking about an end point, and there never really should be an end point. And that's not something that should discourage you. I think that there always should be... I like to live my life with positive anticipation. I like to have something to look forward to. We all need purpose. We need a reason to get out of bed. And so whenever we get to a point, I find that, okay, I'm coming to completion on something. I need to I have to start thinking about something else. Not to distract me from what I'm doing right now, but how often as humans, what happens is we do things and then we stop and we achieve something and then we go, okay, and we realize that it wasn't what it was cracked up to be perhaps, or it was, but then it's like, okay, well, what's next? There must be something more than this, or we need to pick it up a notch. So that arc, I think, always needs to be there. It doesn't need to be a very sharp and steep one, even if it's almost like a straight line, almost like if it's kind of like the horizon, ahead on you on the planet. So, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, mate. I didn't mean to interrupt your trail of thought there.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But it leads us to something I wanted to talk to you about, which is the idea of mastery. So your podcast is Mastering Music, Mastering Life. It's also, this sort of the other thing that you do is speaking and mentoring, coaching, and that sort of thing. And I'm interested to know where the idea, because even what I like about that long time horizon is that many people along the way would find a reason to stop, or the obstacles become too much or whatever. And also just what you said, which is, life's this ongoing thing where you're constantly refining either what you do or who you are or whatever. And that's, I suppose that's how I think about mastery as well. It's this ongoing refining, becoming more honed at something. So where do you think that got instilled in you, or why is that a big part of who you are?
I was really fortunate that my dad was a really wise, well-read, well-travelled, philosophical dude, and he put a lot of those ideas into my head as a youngster. The only issue was two things. One, I was probably too young and immature to really grasp the concept of what things he was saying, so I was very dismissive of what he had to say as a youngster. But looking back on it now, I can only be grateful for Dad at least planting those seeds in my mind. But in answer to your question, if I'm really going to answer that more appropriately or accurately, should we say, a lot of my thinking and attitude to life and way I roll, if you will, is really due to the mentor to whom I probably owe the most to, in terms of helping me understand these concepts and helping me get to a point of knowing these things, and that gentleman, his name is Peter Sage, and I had the good fortune of coming across Peter through a podcast called London Real. That's odd years ago, and was fortunate enough to be mentored by him one-on-one for a period of time and be involved in subsequent other programs, and now consider him to be a friend as well as an ongoing mentor. And I think a lot of his principles and philosophies, which, again, all, Peter will be the first to admit that a lot of what he teaches isn't his original ideology. I mean, a lot of the great wisdom that we have, stems back from the ancients. And Peter's found a way to find a lot of these great ancient teachings and wisdom and contextualize it. Now, for him, he is more a guy that works in the entrepreneurial space. And what I've done and what I do is I take a lot of what Peter's taught me that I've been able to see work in my life, and then find a way to contextualize it in the artistic creative space, because that is my world. That's the world I understand. And when I'm dealing with people who are having their own issues or challenges, I can completely sympathise with where they're at, because I've walked in those shoes, and be able to find those teachings and the themes that apply. Because I think irrespective of whether you are an entrepreneur or an artist or a stockbroker or anything else, I think a lot of the wisdom that's been brought down from from thousands of years ago still apply this day. The Eastern philosophers and whatnot, the ancient Greeks, the Roman philosophers, it all applies. It's Peter that is probably been the most influential mentor that I've had, and I'm extremely grateful to him.
Yeah, great. So mentoring is something obviously you're passionate about, and I've had a relationship with mentors, but it really took me a long time to actually open up to the idea of having a mentor. And now I work with artists in that capacity as well, and I have mentors, and it just makes me think I wish I had a mentor earlier. And it's such a powerful relationship to have. Did you have that mentality also early on? I call it the lone wolf mentality. I'm going to figure it out, and I've got this, and I don't need help. So that's definitely where it came from for me. But
good question, interesting, and I'm going to give you an answer that's almost contradictory. All right. In many respects, I still think of myself as a bit of a lone wolf. We're all individual expressions of life, and I'm running my own race, and I'm on my own path. And again, to use Peter's metaphor, I'm the star of my own movie, because I'm in every fucking scene. Right? So therefore, I am a lone wolf of sorts. And there are people that come in and come out of it, but for the most part, I'm it. As you are, and as everyone else is.
Yeah.
In terms of the mentoring side of things, it was because of when I was younger, going over to America as an absolute nobody, but being mentored by people that were upper echelon kind of guys who just took to me, because they, Americans love people that are crazy, who would be crazy to go and travel over there with no money, with nothing but a dream, and are hell bent on wanting to do something. And so they embrace that kind of person. And it wasn't that I was brave when I was younger. It was just that I was, I was just naive and silly and the folly of youth and no thinking about consequences. But these guys who took me under their wing and not only helped me along the way in terms of the technical aspects of the job, but also how to conduct yourself, understanding about service, understanding about relationship building, and just giving me really good life advice and fathering in a way, because I was very, very young. And I remember I made another pact with myself that, if I ever get to a point where I become, fully fledged as an engineer, or have my own studio one day, that I too will pay forward the generosity of spirit that these guys gave to me, because there's nothing I could do for them, you know. I mean, and probably there was nothing they'd ever want from me anyway. Everything they ever provided was unconditional, and it gave me a great lesson of, well, this is part of what makes these guys great. Yeah, they're all great at their job, and they've all got their particular personality and character traits, but they're all very humble, they're all very giving, they're all very gracious. And so I felt that, well, here's a common denominator, that I'm gonna take on this quality, and one day I will do that, and I'm glad I've been able to do it.
Yeah, awesome. And so in that role, you obviously continue to do your mastering work. In the role of mentor, or, you know, guiding others or whatever, are there obvious patterns that you see from now, you know, doing it for a number of years, obvious patterns that you see in people that you work with that you can pick up pretty quickly, that are common patterns that you want to share anything about?
I think one of the most common things I've seen, and I'm sure that was seen in me, was the pattern of fear. And the greatest fear we all have is, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not resourceful enough. Whatever adjective you want to add in there, there's a lack. Yeah. And the greatest, you know, COVID-19 is nothing as far as the lack of self-esteem pandemic that we have in the world. And so and again, this is coming off what Peter teaches about and gets very early, where he says, you know, greatest thing he ever said to me that had the most impact, where he said, Tony, there's nothing fucking wrong with you. Right? Now, that has been said to me before by many a person, many different ways. Maybe I wasn't ready at the time to take it on, or unwilling to take it on. But the greatest pattern I see is people's pattern of fear, and they're feeling that they're just not enough in whatever capacity. And so, you know, it's very hard to be successful and build levels of success or acquiring things in the world unless you don't feel that you're worthy of them in the first place, and you don't feel that you're good enough in that first place. So one of the things I like to work on straight away is to help. Again, I'm just doing a cut and copy of what Peter did with me. It's formulaic, but it works. So formulas work. You know, no matter what numbers you punch in, you're going to get an answer because of the formula. And so, and that's not to say that I treat everyone with a cookie cutter approach, but it's quite staggering to me how so much of us operate on the same level, have the same fears, anxieties, wants, needs, and whatnot. And so the thing I like to work most on is not about the studio stuff. I mean, we can talk about studio stuff and, you know, mastering, you know, workshops and all that. And I love that, and I do that. But my real interest in, how do I help people master themselves? How do I help them get a handle on who they are, and getting really to a point where they learn how to love themselves, how to be comfortable in their own skin, not to be, you know, not to have their lives dictated to by opinion of other people, and trying to live their life in accordance to the wishes of others, and all this kind of bullshit that so many of us get caught in, as I did. And once I got off that loop, all of a sudden it freed me up to be able to actually live my life in accordance to my wishes, in accordance to what I wanted, and find genuine happiness and contentment in that, rather than always be looking over my shoulder or treading on eggshells and being concerned about what other people are going to say and think. You know, it really is the worst thing you can have. But I don't judge people for it. I understand it. I was there myself. You know me, I consider myself a late bloomer, and I wear that badge with absolute pride, because I don't feel like, well, for fuck's sake, why did it take you so long to fucking get to this point? I'm just glad that I've arrived at this point and been good here. A lot of people will go to their graves never actually getting it. And who's to say that's probably their journey as well, and there's no judgment from my end. But the pattern of I'm not enough is the one that's glaringly obvious, and it's the toughest nut to crack. But that will never, ever change, no matter how many times I tell them or encourage them or say the nice things to them until they get to a point where they're ready to take it on and willing to take it on. Because in order to get there, Mio, it takes a lot of work. It takes you to face up to a lot of shit. And again, fear. We're programmed to be comfortable. We're programmed to avoid the hard stuff. You know, we don't want to go into the dark space. We don't want to face up to our own bullshit. We don't want to do the work. We love the idea of change, but we don't like the idea of what we need to do in order to make that change in life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the number one pattern.
Yep. Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah, and all those things with change, we all want change, but we don't want to change ourselves. We want the exterior to change without having to do anything. Yeah, I think that is a pandemic across the world. And it is, like you're saying, human nature in a way. But yeah, it takes someone to just point it out to you sometimes. And so when it comes to, this is also the interesting thing that there's almost no level of external validation that can plug that hole. Like you see that in the music industry and in Hollywood or whatever, just no matter how much adulation someone gets, they can still end up in a place where they do terrible things to themselves, or like so with that internal self-validation or whatever, is there anything that I don't know, you anything you ask of people, or any way you can have them reflect more deeply on that allows them to come to a certain place, or is that through just, I mean, one of the simple things is, you know, setting an intention and a task and completing it. You know, it's kind of like this self-referential thing of I'm a capable human being.
Well, I think one thing that helped me is to apply things and see the change for myself. Theory is great, and it's wonderful when you're talking about whether it's my life or other people's lives as examples, and they may provide a brief moment of inspiration for some, but nothing quite like someone going through their own experience of feeling it for themselves. You know, that's about them and their life, you know, because that's all that's what really matters, and that's what really counts. Because, you know, people may say, well, that's all right for you, or it's all right for them, but what about me? How does it apply to me, or how's it going to work for me? And so you asked before about setting tasks and whatnot, and yeah, it's what we do in our groups. We get our groups together and we go through, you know, the stuff that is of concern right now, and sometimes you'll find there's some overlap, and sometimes there are other individual unique things, and so like with anything, it's change comes in small incremental steps. You know, it's like building a muscle. And so that's when I'll set a task for the individual and say, right, okay, so what do we need? If you want to, for example, get a meeting with so-and-so, or what do we need to do? What are the steps we need to take? And so we'll set a task for them to go, okay, well, what do you think we should do? And it's never me telling them what to do as much as me asking them. Again, to quote Peter, questions are the steering wheel of the mind. So if we can learn to ask ourselves good questions, better questions, then we can come up with more practical solutions rather than sit in the problem. And so I'll encourage them by asking them questions, or encouraging them to ask themselves better questions to see what they can do. And then that will set up a task or tasks for the week. And the other thing I do as well, and I don't know this is necessarily unique in any kind of mentoring program, but I also put myself up for tasks as well, because I'm not perfect at life, and people may perceive me to be a certain way, but I'm just as human as they are, and I have just as many of my own, you know, insecurities and challenges of life and things that I think about and occasionally overthink about. I'm no different to who they are. I think maybe I have a better handle on some of the things that they're struggling with, but it's not like I'm right up here and these guys are kind of right back in the distance where I can hardly see them. So I'll be honest with them and say, look, I've been putting this off. And so I think this is what I'm going to do. And so I set myself a task. So the next week we are accountable to each other, because one of the great things about having a mentor is accountability. I'm a lazy fuck at the best of times. I have a train at the gym because I'm lazy. I'm just fucking lazy. Now, it would be nice if I had my wiring in such a way that I wouldn't have to need a coach, but I have enough, I'm honest enough with myself to realize that, hey, I can be lazy. And so if I have someone accountable to, then guess what? Doesn't matter how fucking cold it is on that Monday morning, I'll be up and I'll be presenting to see Matt, my trainer, Doherty's, for leg day, and we're going to work our guts out.
Yeah.
Even if I did turn up, I probably wouldn't train as hard if I didn't have a trainer there, to get that extra 5%, which is really where the growth is. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in accountability. I wish I could be so disciplined where I didn't require that kind of thing, but I do.
Yeah.
But I do want to grow and I want to get ahead. And so I realized, well, in order for me to do that, I need to have these things in place, and I will put them in place, and I will put my money where my mouth is, and I'll do the work.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. I was, as you were talking about that, I wanted to ask you about the importance of accountability, because it is so powerful. Just as human beings, there's just the social element of, wanting to front up as your best self and follow through and all those things. I find it's like the how do you describe it? But it's like the 10x of whatever you're doing, because we can all if we're interested in learning a new skill or whatever, we can watch a bunch of YouTube videos, but like all the information is around us, but the accountability is whenever I finish up mentoring with someone, I always do a review essentially, and I ask what was the most powerful part of the mentoring, and they're like, accountability. And I think every single person, it's been their number one thing. It's just it's the activator. Yeah. And this is where this accountability is everything, and it also, this is where it's worthy bringing up this point, which is sometimes you may not have a mentor with you all the time, but you do have peers that are around you all the time. And I think it's important to have a really good peer group, because that can bring another level of accountability as well. And we spend more time thinking about what data plan we're going to go on, or whether we're going to refinance our car, or where we're going to go on a holiday this year, or we put all this research and effort into these kind of things. But how many of us actually sit down and go, who are the people in my life? Who are the most regular people in my orbit that I spend the greater part of my waking hours with? And most of us don't really think about it, because we just think, well, they're our friends, and a lot of people probably have those relationships with certain people that are at best annoying and at worst perhaps toxic. And yet we just kind of stick to it. Again, it comes back to I'm not worthy of that. I'm not good enough, and so I'm just going to stick with what I have. I made my bed. I'm going to lie in it. And how often do we ever stop and think about these things? And this doesn't mean that you got to go with with an AK-47 shooting people in your wake, but sitting down and just honestly thinking about, who are these people? Are they serving me? Am I serving them? Are we having an equal exchange of energy that's mutually beneficial? Are these people ones who will call me out, or I can call out? We are there to lift each other and support each other, but not afraid to have hard conversations with if they are required. I'm very fortunate that I have some friends like that in my life, and I'll give you an example. A guy called Danny Benici. Danny is the guy who will be the first to put his hand up and say, hey, he'll sum me up. And he's not always right in those times, but he's got enough gumption to come up and pull me up and talk it through. And
If it turns out he isn't right or not quite as right, he'll be the first to apologise. But at least, he'll say the thing that other people are thinking. Yeah, and I think it's really important to have friends like that. I believe that your best friends are the ones who'll say the shit things to your face and the nice things behind your back.
Yeah, right. I like that.
Yeah? And I think that so accountability is vital. I believe in life, accountability to a mentor for accountability, but also to a great peer group. That Jim Rohn saying of you are the sum of the 5 people you keep, or I'm paraphrasing here, is very, very true. It says a lot. If you're going to hang around a bunch of people that are, they're go-getters, they're reliable, they have great values, well, by osmosis, you're going to end up being like them. Just energetically, you're going to take it up in the same way that if you're going to hang around people that are of a low vibration, they're not particularly healthy, their views on life are negative, they're down, they're constantly, just blaming everything and everyone for their troubles in the world. Well, you're going to end up like that, whether you like it or not, just by sheer virtue of being in that space.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we take the time out to consider carefully who are our friends, who are our peers, who are people that we spend the most amount of time with, because you're going to be just like them whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, environment is so, it has such an effect. And as you're saying that, thinking of different environments, I go into different friendship groups or whatever. And again, as social creatures, we just sort of adapt to whatever's going on there. We just fall in with, whatever the dominant conversation is or the dominant tone or whatever. That's awesome. And so at the moment, when it comes to mastery, are there things that you have on your plate or in your mind that you're sort of focusing on at the moment as things like this is an area of my life I don't know, I really would serve me to spend more energy in?
I think right now one of them is spending more time with my youngest son and connecting more with him. I didn't do a great job with my oldest 2 kids. Back when they were growing up, I was in a very different space and very angry, and I was addicted to drugs, and I was in a marriage that I didn't want to be in. And again, this doesn't justify or defend any of my actions as an absent. I was a great provider as a father, but I was very absent in terms of, giving them, what's the most important thing a kid wants in their parent? It's their time. It's quality time. And if anything, I did all I could to not be there because I just didn't want to be in my married home. So these days, I'm divorced now. I've been for about 5-6 years or what? What am I talking about? Nearly 8 years now. Anyway, I've been divorced for a while. And I have a young son, Andreas, who's 13 going on 14. And the one thing I'm working on now is how am I able to spend not just more time with him, but just make more quality time and connect with him as a father. That's probably the first, foremost, utmost thing in my mind, because I know that it's all good to work and make money and provide, but it all really means nothing if you, especially, young adolescent boy at this time of life where, young men are always looking for, good male role models. And unfortunately, we're living in a society now where statistically kids growing up are going to end up, having their parents divorce, which usually means the primary caregiver is the mother for the most part, and so they're not going to have their dads around. And this is why we're seeing this proliferation of gangs and kids who they're not bad kids at all, but they're looking for leadership. They're looking for they're looking for love. They're looking for love. They're looking for connection. They're looking for that sense of family, that sense of of bonding and kinship. So that's probably the first and foremost thing on my mind that is something I'm consciously continually trying to work on. And then it's, doing more speaking and mentoring and working more in that space. I mean, I still have my mastering studio. I love that. Everything in my life today, I owe it all to mastering, everything. Whatever I've accumulated, the fact that I was able to, have a home, I got married, I co-parent and raised children, like everything came from there. I hardly make any money or income from my speaking and haven't done for a long time. I kind of felt, incorrectly, mind you, that it was just I had a duty to the universe of just doing this. But now just working on, how do I keep doing that in a voluntary way, in a service capacity, but also how can I do more to monetize this as well. So that's another area at the moment that I've been working on and putting some focus in. And other than that, it's just trying to keep working on the fine line of, I don't want to call it balance, because I don't believe there is such a thing as having balance. It's different, but how do I remain conscious and aware of being able to fit in all the things that matter to me in a way that will not negatively impact on other areas of my life.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks for sharing all that. Really appreciate it. We'll probably wrap up around now, but I want to thank you for the conversation, and in talking with you, something that comes through really clearly as to why, for many people, you're in some ways a magnetic figure. I think people move towards you is through your openness and honesty and vulnerability. There's a real like what you see is what you get kind of vibe, like this is who I am. And that comes back to what you were talking about, the self-love, self-acceptance of like, this is who I am, take it or leave it. I'm just being myself. I'm running my own race. And I just want to thank you for being that person, because I think we need more of those as well. People just really standing out and saying it's okay to stand out. It's all right to be yourself.
Well, you're never going to stand out if you're always trying to fit in.
Yeah? That's right.
And again, as I've gotten older, I've become better at strengthening I really don't give a shit what you think about me. But knowing that, again, a lot of stuff I talk about or share with people, a lot of other people are thinking and feeling and knowing, and they might be ready to talk about it themselves or to admit to themselves or to anyone else. And that doesn't, and that's okay. Everyone comes to their moment when they're ready and when they're willing. I just know that a lot of the things I say, a lot of people can relate to, because I'm just as human as they are. I'm just more prepared these days to, whether you want to call it air my dirty laundry or be more transparent or be more honest about things and talk about the stuff that people do find difficult to talk about. We all crave authenticity, Mio. Being authentic is everything as far as I'm concerned. And authenticity is a binary thing. You can't try to be authentic, because by virtue of trying, you are inauthentic right there. And everybody values authenticity, but they struggle themselves being authentic. Why? Because, again, I'm afraid what people are going to think about me. I'm worried about what they're going to say. How will I look in the eyes of others if I actually allow myself to be myself? But a lot of people still struggle not really knowing who they are.
Yeah.
They have a sense of it. Deep down, they have a sense of it. But, again, it's the fear of, if I really embrace this and if I really allow myself to spread myself out and do this and say this, what's Mio going to think? What are the audience going to think? And so it's it's the path of least resistance. I want to be comfortable. It's the devil I know. I don't like it. I'm not happy with it, but fuck it. It's familiar. So I stay in it.
Yeah.
And look, this, I'm not a black belt when it comes to this stuff. I'm still learning, but I'm just so delighted that although it really took me into my 50s and, mid-50s to actually get a better grasp of it, it's never too late. If anyone's watching this and feeling like I'd like to be more this way or more that way, but my life has passed by and I'm sort of coming into the closing stages, it's never too late. The last thing you want to do is be on your deathbed and have regret that, oh fuck, you know, why didn't I do this? And why didn't I spend more time with my kids? Or why didn't I allow myself to be happy? Or why didn't I take up that hobby or that interest? Or why did I stay in that marriage? Or why didn't I make peace with my estranged family or whatnot? And by that time, it's too late, mate.
Yeah.
And so I know that when I come to my dying moments, I want to look back on life and go, wow, you know, it may not have been perfect, but it was perfect for me. And there's no loose ends. And I managed to do all the things I could do and be happy. And if reincarnation is a thing, then sure, let's go have another go at this and see how we can do it better next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful note to end it on. Thanks again, man. Hopefully we'll do this again. I think we'll do this again.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. We'll do this. And if there's anything I can do to help you with what you're doing with your clients, man, you know where to find me. Let's chat and let's see if I can make any contribution towards what you're doing. I'll be delighted to help you out in any way I possibly can.
Cool, man. Very generous. All right. I'll catch you soon. Bye.
You got it, man. Thanks, buddy.
So there you have my conversation with Tony Jack the Bear Mantz. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of that. If you want to connect with Tony, you can go to jackthebear.com.au. There you'll find links to Deluxe Mastering and also Mastering Music, Mastering Life, and all the other things that Tony's up to. He also does public speaking, so if you want to get onto him, you can go check him out there. If you like this episode, please like it, give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, share it with a friend, review it, all those things you can do, and they all really help the podcast reach more music lovers and artists and musicians, so I really appreciate that. Also, please leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts from this episode, anything you want to add, would love to hear from you. If you'd like to get a download of 5 of my best tracks, you can head to mijobiscan.com/free music. You can also get a copy of my CD, Golden Moment. It's a limited edition signed copy that I'll send to you anywhere in the world. Also comes with the album, a digital download, and the booklet and lyrics. But you can get that at mijobiscan.com/GMCD. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay golden, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.